Coming up on this episode, I've got some thrift flips, some trash to treasures for you. I'm really excited about it, so let's get started. So I picked up this dresser for $50 off of Facebook Marketplace. It was such a score. At first glance, you look at it and you're like, it doesn't really need anything. It's gorgeous, it's a beautiful piece. But upon closer inspection, you'll notice that there's a little bit of wear and tear from kids. Some scratches, some nicks, some dings. This drawer right here, it's got some issues. So we're gonna try to, see, I can't even close it. We're gonna try to repair that. As you can see, I've already got my TV sitting on it. We're gonna be using it as a TV stand in my living room makeover that I've got coming up. I'm really excited about that. Now, a lot of people's inclination is to paint everything, and I actually don't want to paint this. In fact, my plan is to not paint it, but there is some pretty significant scratching on it that we do need to address, and I thought that I would take the opportunity to darken it up just a touch, very strategically, because I actually really like the finish. It's got some really cool features, some white wax on it that kind of offers a lot of interest and detail, but I thought if we were really strategic, we could darken up some specific areas so that we can draw some of the darkness of my kitchen cabinets that are right over here and some darkness of my fireplace mantle that's right over here and kind of bring it into this. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't have an exact plan for how to do this, but I think it's going to be an amazing piece. So let's get started on it. So normally I would tell you to take this outside and do this outside, but it is 39 degrees here in Florida, which is basically freezing. Well, it's pretty much close to freezing anywhere, but that's really, really cold here in Florida. So we're gonna have to do this inside. We're gonna be careful. My kids are at school. When it warms up a little bit later in the day, I will open everything up and air it out really, really good. But the first thing we're gonna do is repair that wobbly drawer. So you can see here that this is off and that's what's going on. So we need to kind of reinstall this so that it will open and close properly. But that's a pretty easy repair. But it's got a problem here because this is cracked and so that's loose. So we're gonna need to put a little wood glue and a clamp on that so that it can dry so that we can properly track this drawer. So once we put on a little wood glue, I kind of spread that cracked wood open a little bit and kind of push it down with my finger, and then I take a clamp and clamp it into place. And that piece of wood that I'm putting behind it is there just to kind of distribute the pressure evenly along the cracked area, and then I let it dry. We've let this dry overnight, so we're gonna release it. Yeah, that doesn't want to come off. There we go. Almost looks like it was never even broken. So now we are going to screw this back into place. Once we screw this back into place, then we'll have a functioning drawer, hopefully. We'll just stick that screw into here. Okay, and then we need to put one in the back there. We're gonna take some sandpaper, and I've got two grits here. I've got 120 grit for kind of some of the deeper scratches. I'm not gonna use this very much. And then I've got 1,000 grit, which is basically like wet sandpaper. And the reason I'm gonna just use this is just to get a very fine roughness so that it will take the gel stain a little bit better. On this drawer, you can see some heavy scratching, including a smiley face. A happy little reminder of being loved by kids. But I want to remove some of these heavy scratches, so I take the 120 grit sandpaper and sand a few strategic places. Remove a sticker from the side, and then I give a good wet sand to the entire piece with 1,000 grit sandpaper. So you can kind of see that I've done a light sanding on most of the entire thing, and then like heavier sanding in certain spots that kind of needed a little bit more. Now that we've got it kind of scuffed up on the entirety, I'm gonna just take some window cleaner. I use Method Peppermint. because it smells really good and it works also really good. So I'm just gonna spray this on all of it and then wipe it down with a microfiber cloth, and that will kind of grab the dust. And then if there's any areas that need a little bit finer grit, we will go over that because I can already see that there is. And then we will let it fully dry before applying some gel stain. So for this next part, I would absolutely recommend doing this outside, in a garage, whatever. I don't really have the option today. We're gonna gel stain this right here. And I have protected the floors by putting plastic down, and then I also did some brown paper over the top of that, just as like a double assurance that I don't get any of this gel stain on my floor. So I've got gloves on, and I'm gonna be using this Kona gel stain. This Kona gel stain is the same one that I've used on my fireplace mantle. So I really am hoping this darkens up the wood just a touch. Let's start right here on the top, and then always with the grain of the wood. And I think this is gonna look so pretty. And the nice thing about gel stain is it kind of acts a little bit more like a paint while still showing the wood grain. So this will be great. Let's do this. I'm gonna not even push this down into the grooves here so we can see some of that detailing still. When staining, even with gel stain, rub it on in the direction of the wood grain and it will save yourself a whole bunch of headache. Now, it was at this point when I regretted sanding down these particular areas with the heavier grit sandpaper. And I wished that I had just done a wet sand only, because the gel stain had much better coverage over the top of the existing stain than I thought it would. And it would have been just fine. And what I did ended up creating some unevenness in my stain, which ended up creating more work for me in the end. So lesson learned. If I were to do this again, I would have just wet sanded the whole thing and then used the gel stain to cover up the big scratches. So you live and you learn. Now you want to allow at least 24, possibly 48 hours for the gel stain to dry before applying your polyurethane. I ended up using the wipe-on polyurethane and I had to do 4 coats of it. Yes, 4 coats. I think I could have gotten away with 2 had I not done those sanded down spots, but in those areas it created a little rough spot and it was really obvious. But once I did the 4 coats, it eventually disguised and evened out the finish. I used a satin polyurethane, and this doesn't look very satin to me. Actually, it looks pretty glossy, but in the end, I am really happy with the final result. I think it's just gorgeous. You could easily spend $1,000 in a store for this piece all day long, but I spent just $50 plus a little in supplies that I already had on hand, and the results are stunning. What do you think? Have you noticed that there's something a little different about me today? For those of you who notice what it is, you get 10 bonus points. I picked this up at a thrift store and it was on sale for $4. And to me, it kind of looks like a giant pond from a really large chess set. I don't know what it is. What do you think? I want to kind of turn this into kind of like an architectural, like salvage piece that's going to be just like a decorative element on one of my side shelves. But to do this trash to treasure, we are going to be using some baking items. To begin, I want to add a little bit of height. So I've had this little plaque floating around my stash for well over a year now. It's from the Dollar Tree, and I just decided to add it to the base of our pond. But it does have glitter on it, so I start by sanding that off just a little bit, even though it's mostly going to be covered up anyway. Then I add a little bit of wood glue and take 4 screws and screw that in the bottom. Now, that might be a little excessive, but I know it's on there good. Then I wanted to fill in the gaps around the base because I'm going to be adding some embellishment. And I figured hot glue was just as good as anything, and it would dry a lot quicker than caulking it. So then I take these stickers from the Dollar Tree and I wrap them around the top, then the base, and then the seam around 1/3 of the way from the bottom. Now, I want this piece to have the look of stone, and for this, I'm gonna need a kitchen item. All over, I have been seeing this baking soda technique where you mix baking soda with a paint, and the paint that we're gonna be using is Succulent by Folk Art. I wanted to bring out this color a little bit more. It's in the pillows, so I just wanted to have a few accent pieces using this color. So we're gonna mix these two together, and then we are going to paint our chest piece. Now, there's no exact recipe for this baking soda paint. I simply just mixed in a little baking soda into my acrylic paint until it was a little bit thicker. Now, the idea of this paint is that it makes it look a little bit rough, and that is perfect because I want this piece to look like I pulled it out of a garden or something. I paint it in kind of a random pattern and I end up doing a few coats. Then more of those spices that I mentioned. While the paint is still wet, I sprinkle on cinnamon in a random pattern to simulate rust. If I get it a little too heavy in one area, that's not a problem. I just go back over the top of it with a little bit more paint until I'm happy with the look. Now, I got my next idea from the Lone Fox, where he created some pieces by just getting some dirt out of his garden and mixing it in with water and made mud. And then he brushed it on the piece and it kind of gave it this like aged patina, which was really cool. So I give this a try, but the soil here in Florida is pretty sandy. And so this is more sandy than muddy, but it almost kind of was a happy accident because it really amped up the cement look. But it would have also been nice to recreate his look as well using regular mud. But once I'm happy with the final look, I take it outside and spray it in a dead flat finish to seal the look. I just didn't want dirt like flaking all over the place. So it's a far cry from what it started out as, and it looks so very high-end in a rustic sort of way, but it's awesome. What do you think? Last but certainly not least, I came across this kind of vintage silver tin. So I thought this piece kind of had like a vintage looking vibe to it. It was kind of a little bit beat up, but then I turned it over and guess what? It's from IKEA. I have been wanting to do kind of like an awesome Swiss cross like first aid kit metal tin for a while now. And I've seen a couple of people do it, but I've had this plan for months and I just have been looking for the right container. And now I found this one at my thrift store for $6.99. What I thought we could do is take it outside and spray it all white. Rather than doing like the black crosses that I've seen or the red, I really wanted to bring in that seafoam color. Now I'm going to be making mine out of vinyl that I found in this beautiful seafoam color, but you could easily recreate this Swiss cross by using some painter's tape and simply just painting it on. So you don't need to have the vinyl, but it sure made it easy in my case. And I just think that this is so adorable. Now, Whiskey and Wit did one recently and it turned out really cute. So I'll link her episode below too so you can see that. She did hers in the black and white, which is really cute. But they're really kind of on trend right now, really fun. And I think this is gonna look super adorable on my shelf. And if I don't end up using it on my shelf, I'm sure it will look great somewhere. And next week, I've got my extreme living room makeover for you with a couple of new DIY decor ideas. So watch for that. If you enjoyed this episode, here's another one that I think you'll like as well. And to all of my DIY Niners, I just want to tell you that you are more powerful than you know. We'll see you next time. Bye.